So this is our second webinar, and in the series for this particular year of the Student Research Symposia. This one is asking good research questions. We do have some controls in the side. And so the format of these are to just do open office hours and just review some of the resources that we have available. Do you want to go to the next slide?
I can't seem to get it to go to the next slide. Oh, there we go.
And we have our locations are set up right now for the SRS. We have Wayne State University in Detroit, and the Northeast Mid-Atlantic one will be in Fredonia with Mike hosting, who is our host for today as well. And then we have in the Northwest will be in Bozeman, Montana. Pacific will be at NASA Ames. In the Southeast, we'll be at University of North Carolina in Charlotte. And in the Southwest will be at Metropolitan State University. Actually, I believe that one's going to be at NCAR in Boulder, Colorado. So we need to update that.
Oh, that's cool.
And these are all of our webinars and open office hours. We keep these from 7 to 8 o'clock, so we run on time. And the next one that's coming up is in December, and that'll be on analyzing data. And this one is developing good research questions. And then we previously had done in October conducting field investigations. So this month is really the month when we ask teachers to focus on developing good research questions.
Okay.
And then we have some resources for students and teachers. New this year is our teacher hotline. So if teachers have a question about the research process or doing this in their classroom with their students, they can fill out a Google form. It's very short. And we connect you with a Globe teacher who's gone to the Student Research Symposia before and who's done this with their students. And hopefully it's a very quick conversation that's very helpful and targeted to what teachers need. If you're an experienced teacher and you want to join the hotline team, then we have an email address for Haley who can help you get on the hotline team. And then we do have a Student Research Symposia teacher listserv. If you're not on the list, we encourage you to sign up. We keep that list. We send out updates every 2 weeks approximately with updates to the Student Research Symposia, such as when the funding is due or funding application forms are due. If there's any updates to any of the events themselves, we try and highlight those and then remind you of when there are upcoming webinars. And this is the new web page. And again, if you have any questions while we are on this call, to just raise your hand or type in the chat window, and that's where I'll be managing things. But Mike is really our presenter and in charge. So I turn it over to him.
Well, thanks, Jen. Thanks for keeping track. I can't see the hand raising or the chat, so just let me know if anybody has any questions. We'll go from there. So our focus tonight is the idea of trying to develop good research questions. And I think a great place for us to start is building on last month's open office hours where we focused on field investigations. So broadly, so first of all, my work is, I'm really lucky I get to work with pre-service science teachers, as well as lots and lots and lots of teachers that are in classrooms that are trying to do good science with kids. So this is really a pretty common discussion that we have. The whole idea of trying to start with kids' questions, and we'll kind of wrap up talking about QFT a little bit. But the kids' questions sort of take these broadly, these 3 different kinds of forms. And so descriptive questions where we're just trying to look at observational data, things that are measurable, that maybe we can take advantage of geospatial technologies so kids are able to locate their observations and their measurements in their place, and then try to make sense of that. We have comparative questions, so the idea of trying to look at measurable variables that are interacting with each other, so a dependent and independent variable relationship. And then finally, correlative questions. So the idea of trying to see if there's a relationship between the questions. I'm going to try to always remember to come back to this. I think sometimes we don't give enough credence to this idea about descriptive questions with kids. I don't know as if I think there's necessarily a progression from descriptive questions to comparative to correlative, but we have some really positive results with kids whose questions tend to be more descriptive, because that's kind of what kind of fits a kid's mindset for thinking about questions. Sort of the I wonder what's happening kind of thing. So I'm going to try to always remember to not forget to bring that up. So when we talk about these descriptive questions, the kind of broadly, how many, how frequently, what's the temperature, the height, the mass, when does something or where does something happen? And what we would really like and kind of expect with the Student Research Symposium is that kids are connecting their data using GLOBE protocols to other data that may be in the GLOBE database, or even better, if we could find a way for them to connect their data to other classrooms that are collecting similar data, sort of almost in situ. So that would be really cool. So these kinds of descriptive questions are the questions that are driving lots of the work that we're seeing in classrooms now with the adoption of the next generation science standards, or New York's version, NISLS. We kind of think about comparative questions. So is there a difference between Group A and Group B? We're collecting lots and lots of data now kind of regionally around climate. So lots of the kids' questions now around climate are looking at the difference between other partners in our regional climate network, which are GLOBE partners, as they're GLOBE teachers, GLOBE classrooms as well. And then again, sort of sticking to this climate and weather thing, we're seeing sort of this change over time, which is a really overarching kind of focus in the next generation science standards. So the kind of the difference between what we're seeing now, what we've seen in the past. And then finally, sort of this idea about correlative questions. So is there a relationship between variables? Kind of the simplest way, as one goes up, does the other go down? How does one change in a variable affect another variable as it changes? So kind of really broadly, those are kind of how we think about grouping the questions. And if you were able to see the field investigations presentation last month, or go back and able to watch the recording of that, you'll see that the idea of questions driving these field investigations is a really important thing to have. So as a kind of the challenge that teachers have is helping their students decide what they want to focus on. And I think my suggestion around this, the big idea of good research questions, is that the kids focus on those, sort of broadly look at those descriptive, comparative, and correlative questions. But the most important parts is that the question is driven by the student. And I was just in a classroom. We had a little call around the SRS today, and then I shot out to a classroom to work with some middle school students, and it's really, really interesting to see the direction that their questions take them. And just talking to the teacher, the idea that she never would have come up with those questions that the kids have now done. I sort of emphasize to our teachers to think small to get at the big. I think some of our teachers have been scared away a little bit from their prior experiences with things, I guess, science fair kinds of things. And so they tend to focus on the big, but having the students focus on the small kinds of questions that they can really get their minds around and be able to collect data that's meaningful to them is really can turn out to be really lead to some big revelations from the kids. So part of our work with the kids and really kind of at the heart of the SRS is this idea about claims, evidence, and reasoning. And so I've started to work with the teachers to sort of flip that around a little bit, and that the students are collecting data, which is their evidence that they're making claims around, and then trying to shape their reasoning from that. And then the last big thing that I try to work on with the teachers, that it's really okay for these questions to morph. We have time. I think it's actually some really valuable learning when the kids run into problems, run into challenges around their questions, and it's okay for the question to shift. I think it actually models pretty well what the natural process in science is, where sort of that sense of discovery and how that new discovery takes you off in a new direction. Jen reminded me as we were sort of talking before we started the session to remember about the question formulation technique. So I think Jen might have posted in the chat box already the link to last year's webinar, but the question formulation technique is really a great strategy for helping kind of getting at these points that I have up above. So the idea that the students are generating the questions, shaping those questions in really important ways. So looking at questions that are open questions, questions that are closed questions, then trying to look at how they could take those same questions and change them maybe from open to closed or from closed to open, and really realizing the advantages and disadvantages of both types of questions. And then finally, sort of as a capstone, being able to prioritize the questions that they want to investigate and take those questions and move forward with them. So a really, if you're not familiar with QFT, it's from the Right Question Institute. You can Google, go on their website. They have some great resources that are available. You can download them and use them tomorrow. The book that sort of drove this is If You Could Change One Thing. And it really has, I think QFT really has changed a lot of practice in classrooms that we've been working